Hello, hi, and welcome to A Case of the Jills. I am really excited for this week because I'm a huge nerd, and I stumbled across an incredible theory that really helps us to understand both amenorrhea and overtraining syndrome. So I'm really excited to break it down and share it all with you. Today's video will talk about this concept as it pertains to hypothalamic amenorrhea, and later in the week we'll have another video that talks about this concept as it relates to overtraining syndrome. Let's jump right in. I heard about this concept when I read a blog post over at realliferd.com, and Robin is the blogger there. She's a super smarty pants who is a registered dietitian and also a nurse. I think she's either training to be a nurse or is already a nurse, and she's studying at like Columbia in New York. So she's brilliant. Oh, and also she's adorable too. So she had a blog post that was talking about cumulative stress due to exercise, and she introduced a concept to me that I had never heard of before, and it's called allostatic load. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and of course we talked a lot about stress, and stress is something that I talk about a lot on this channel, and let's face it, it's what we all talk about. Yet I had never heard of this concept before. The definition of allostatic load is basically the cumulative effect of the wear and tear on the body when it is in a chronically stressed situation. Each time the body senses stress, a tiny little physiological adjustment is made somewhere in the body. Over time, these little adjustments can now go from, small little adjustments to a complete dysregulation of a system. Even though from a biological perspective, stress is a chronic activation of the responses in a physiological way, the extent of the physiological adaptations are a result of both environmental and psychological factors. So even though it might be that we notice stress somewhere physiologically, whether or not that actually affects us has to do with the physiological, what's going on around you, and also what your mind is thinking. And of course, stress is not always bad, but when it becomes chronic, that's when we start to notice difficulties. On top of this, everybody has a different threshold for stress, and not just physical stress. It's, physical and emotional and mental and everything in between. We all have different thresholds, meaning we all have a different sort of tolerance level of what we can stand. So let's talk about how this pertains to hypothalamic amenorrhea. I'm sure you kind of already have an idea how it does. There's this really great article that I read today, and it's on what they call athletic amenorrhea, which for our purposes is what we're dealing with. I'm going to link it below. And the question it asks is whether this is just an energy deficit problem or are there psychogenic factors as well. Psychogenic meaning things that are psychological in nature. I actually find it interesting that they had to ask this question, since here on my channel I talk a lot about the RED-S model, which is the relative energy deficiency in sport model. I never think of the fact that just exercise and just dietary intake could be considered the culprit for hypothalamic amenorrhea, let's say, in a vacuum. Can you believe that they do that? I actually find it a little hard to believe that one could think that it just has to do with exercise and energy intake, and it has absolutely nothing to do with all the other extenuating circumstances. But, that's the way I guess people thought of it previously. In fact, this article does say that previous studies on what they're calling here athletic amenorrhea actually only focused on the metabolic factors. So meaning things directly related to the metabolism, such as your exercise level or dietary intake. They used to say that in studying hypothalamic amenorrhea that they would separate out the metabolic from the psychogenic. And now they're saying there's no way you can do that because everything works synergistically. You really cannot pull out the physical from the mental. Kind of seems like common sense, right? It's basically impossible to separate these factors. And in my mind, I started thinking about it, and I remember studying mythology when I was in college. And I was thinking of Hydra, or a hydra, which is like a multi-headed beast of an animal. This whole concept of hypothalamic amenorrhea is something that is like a multi-headed beast. It's not just one thing, it's everything, which meshes perfectly with this concept of allostatic load, because allostatic load is essentially the beast with all of the heads. With hypothalamic amenorrhea, the HPA axis, which we have talked about a lot before, actually has to alter its functioning in order to counteract the fact that there's not enough energy present in the body. It's altering its functionality so that you can live. You don't need, technically speaking, to menstruate in order to continue to live. So in order to save your life, your body has shut off this non-essential functionality in order for you to like get up and breathe every day. Your body does this all the time. When it has to conserve, it will shut down systems so that you don't die. All of this is very variable, of course, what is actually going to push the system over the edge so that it doesn't function anymore, because we're all very different. And as I said before, we all have a different tolerance level. Before you start doing that thing that you do, let me just state here, don't make this into something else that you're not good at or that you're weaker than other people at. The factors that contribute to your tolerance level are completely beyond your control in most cases. It has to do with genetic factors and a million trillion other things. There's really nothing you can do about it. So just let that go. So what have we learned up to this point? We have learned that the reason why we have hypothalamic amenorrhea is not relegated to just physical, and it's not relegated to just mental. It is a synergy of all these factors together. It created this big multi-headed monster that we have to combat as a sum total before we can get better. I love this concept because instead of focusing just on what we're eating and exercise, yes, those are hugely important factors, it invites us to take a look at the other aspects of our lives that could be contributing to the overall stress, that allostatic load. I found this to be true in quite a few of the women that have sent me emails. They've complained to me about not getting their period, and they describe their lives and they say they don't know why they're not getting their period because they've sort of reduced stress in one area. Let's say they've increased their calories or they have lowered their exercise. And then they start telling me about their schoolwork and their job where they're a waitress and they're on their feet all day. Oh, and by the way, I've been in a fight with my mom, and gee, I'm really concerned about, X thing. So when you add it up, like we say, your body doesn't know the difference between all of that stress and a 10-mile run. So you're kind of bombarding your system with all these other things that are not running, but they're just as detrimental to the overall whole. So I have actually found that writing it out can be incredibly helpful. So the next part of this video, I wanted to walk through with you what I think is an incredibly valuable exercise in order to start thinking about where all this allostatic load beast monster is coming from. You should definitely get out a nerdy notebook like me, and you should get out a pencil or a pen and start writing down one by one. So let's talk about some of the places where you might be uncovering some stress. The basics are easy. You're training, your kind of crappy nutrition, a lot of you have. Fertility concerns, your commute sucks and you're in 3 hours of traffic every day. That one, that right off the bat. You drink too much coffee and you need to reduce, that is a definite. And then you sort of have the umbrella of work, family, school, relationships. Pretty much all of us are gonna have some stress in those areas. But we have to stop and we have to actually start getting into each one of those things and discovering where the stress is. So let's talk about your job. Like I said, do you work on your feet? Do you have a very physical job? Do you work a third shift? Do you work several jobs? Are you dealing with major life changes? Maybe you moved to a new house or apartment. Maybe you moved to a new state. Maybe someone lost a job. Is there a serious family illness that you are all dealing with right now? Let's talk about school stuff. Have you just transferred maybe to a new school? Do you need to transfer to a new school? Are you unsure about your career path? Are you afraid of how you're going to afford school? Are you paying for college with an athletic scholarship and now you're nervous because you're not healthy and you're afraid of your future in that sport? Are you worried about your grades? Your relationships, are you in love? Are you single? Are you married and don't want to be? Are you divorced and don't want to be? Do you feel pressure to have children but you're not sure if you want them? Are you questioning your sexuality or your gender? Are you in love with your best friend? There's a million questions I could ask here, and all of them would probably make for great novels, but they're adding up to stress in your life. Do you get enough sleep? Easy question, right? Hard answer. What about the weather? No one thinks of this, but is it really cold where you live for more than 6 months out of the year? That bums me out like crazy. It's cold here, and there's no sunshine for 6 months or more. It feels that way. That can really add to your stress level. Let's talk about your hours of training, the type of training. The compromises that you're making in your nutrition, calories, macronutrients, timing of your meals. Are you sticking to timing of meals in a way that is making it difficult for you to just live peacefully? Of course, we have to factor in things like your performance goals for your sport, the goals that you still are trying to hang on to, the goals that you have not yet achieved, the ones that you want to get back to once you recover. Possibly the nastiest of all of the heads on this hydra is the one about your self-perception and body image. The amount of mental energy it takes to conceptualize ourselves and where we fit in the world can be overwhelming. There's not a person watching this video right now, myself included, who hasn't doubted themselves physically at one point or another. We want to present ourselves to the world in a way that makes us comfortable. And for people like us, this might be a broad generalization, but for those of us who suffer from hypothalamic amenorrhea and an energy deficiency, like what we're comfortable about ourselves and what we're comfortable presenting to the world is pretty narrow. When we feel that we have to make changes that are going to alter that for us, it's going to cause stress. This whole thing of body image we've talked about so much, and it can be overwhelming. So I'm urging you to write all this stuff down. List everything out. See how the list on the page has become your very own multi-headed Hydra monster. Once you write all this down, of course, the next logical step is to see how you can go about just whacking off all those heads. I really, really love this concept because I think that it invites us to take a more holistic look at our entire lives and try not to just like fix the one tiny thing, but try to look deeper and see how we can become better people through this process. That's the best part of this. I mean, not to get all woo-woo on you, but like this amenorrhea thing, maybe it's a gift. Maybe it's inviting us to do more introspection in a way that we wouldn't have ordinarily been encouraged to do. Maybe we just have to fight a little harder at it, but maybe we're going to get to know ourselves in a way that other people may not. Maybe we're going to have better balance in the future because we're not going to let that multi-headed beast gain its power back. We're going to be cognizant and thinking of this stuff because we know how we got here and we don't want to go back. I really hope that this is helpful today. This was incredibly helpful for me. I think it was really enlightening, and it's a very simple concept, but it's very powerful. If and when you write down your list and it made you think of things that perhaps you hadn't considered as contributors to your situation, would you please leave me a comment below and tell me what that looked like for you? This is exciting stuff, and I really think that it's going to help a lot of us that feel a little stuck in our minds about kind of how to move forward. I still am hanging on to the hope of 1,000 subscribers by the end of August. And I would love it if you would give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe if you haven't done so already. The website is under construction right now, and I'm really excited about the changes. Lots of good stuff coming. I have finished the ebook of frequently asked questions, which will be available very soon on that new website. It is being edited right now by a very special person. Thank you, Addie, for your editing skills. So look forward for the next video this week, which is going to take this concept of allostatic load and apply it to overtraining. And I hope that you have an incredible rest of your week, and thank you for following me on Instagram and being a part of the A Case of the Jills family. Thanks for watching. See you soon.